Imagine the intense, suffocating heat of a sauna. You are dripping with sweat, your heart is pounding against your ribs, and your body is begging for relief. And then, mere seconds later, you plunge into freezing, cracking ice water. The shock steals your breath. It feels like a threat, it feels like danger. But what if this controlled suffering is actually the key to unlocking an ancient biological upgrade?
That is the exact paradox of human evolution. We have spent thousands of years building a world that protects us from the elements. We live in climate-controlled boxes, sleep in perfectly regulated temperatures, and avoid discomfort at all costs. But our biology was not designed for this endless, frictionless comfort. It was forged in the crucible of extreme heat, biting cold, and unpredictable environments. When we remove all environmental stress, our bodies do not just relax, they weaken.
It is a fascinating and somewhat terrifying thought. We engineered our way out of the wild, but in doing so, we might have accidentally engineered away our own resilience. Today, we are diving deep into the frontier of thermal stress physiology. We are going to explore how exposing ourselves to extreme temperatures isn't just a trendy internet challenge, but a profound biological signal that can re-engineer our energy production, sharpen our mental focus, and literally dictate the survival of our cells.
The foundational concept here is something called hormesis. It is the biological principle that what does not kill you in a very literal, carefully dosed sense actually makes you stronger. When you expose your body to extreme heat or cold, you are creating a physiological disruption. You are forcing the body into a temporary survival mode. If that stress is continuous and overwhelming, it causes damage. But if it is brief, intentional, and controlled, the body interprets that stress as vital information. It triggers a massive cascade of cellular repair systems.
So we are essentially tricking our biology. We are sending a fake emergency broadcast to the nervous system, forcing it to deploy the heavy artillery of cellular repair. And from what I understand, the primary target of this repair operation is the mitochondria.
Precisely. Mitochondria are the microscopic power plants inside nearly every cell in your body. They are responsible for generating the energy you need to think, move, and simply exist. But here is the problem. Over time, and especially under the burden of modern lifestyles, poor sleep, chronic psychological stress, highly processed diets, and sedentary behavior, these power plants take on damage. They become inefficient. They leak free radicals. The body ends up cluttered with dysfunctional, aging mitochondrial units.
It sounds like a city grid running on failing rusted power stations. Eventually, the lights are going to flicker, which translates to brain fog, fatigue, and accelerated aging. So how exactly does jumping into an ice bath or sweating in a sauna fix a microscopic power plant?
It triggers a brilliant biological cleanup process known as mitophagy. When you apply thermal stress, the cellular environment becomes demanding. The body looks around and realizes it cannot afford to support weak, inefficient mitochondria during a crisis. So, it selectively destroys and recycles the damaged ones. It clears out the cellular debris to make way for new, robust mitochondrial networks. You are quite literally burning away the dead wood to let the forest thrive.
That is such a powerful metaphor. You have to let the weakest parts of yourself dissolve so the whole system can survive and evolve. Let us break down the two sides of this thermal coin, starting with heat. Saunas have been revered in cultures around the world for centuries, from Finnish sweat lodges to Native American ceremonies. But modern science is finally catching up to the ancient wisdom. What exactly happens when we sit in that suffocating heat?
When your core temperature rises, your body initiates a systemic cardiovascular response. Your blood vessels dilate, your heart rate elevates significantly, and your circulation increases. In many ways, sitting in a hot sauna mimics the physiological demands of moderate cardiovascular exercise. But on a molecular level, something even more remarkable occurs. The heat triggers the release of heat shock proteins.
Heat shock proteins. They sound like microscopic paramedics rushing to the scene of an accident.
That is an excellent way to describe them. Under intense heat, the three-dimensional structures of the proteins in your cells can begin to misfold or degrade. Heat shock proteins rush in to stabilize, repair, and protect these structures. They ensure that your cells maintain their integrity under stress. And the beauty of this system is that once these proteins are activated, they do not just protect against heat, they provide a lingering resilience against other forms of stress, including oxidative damage and inflammation.
which explains why extensive observational studies, particularly those long-term studies out of Finland, show such strong correlations between frequent sauna use and dramatically lower risks of cardiovascular events. It is not just about relaxing muscles. It is about fundamentally training the vascular system to handle pressure. But let us pivot to the opposite extreme, cold immersion. This has completely taken over the biohacking space. People are plunging into chest freezes full of ice in their backyards. Beyond the social media spectacle, what is the survival brain actually doing when it hits freezing water?
The reaction to severe cold is instantaneous and violent. The moment your skin registers that extreme drop in temperature, your autonomic nervous system slams the panic button. You experience massive vasoconstriction. Your blood vessels clamp down to push warm blood to your vital organs. At the same time, your brain is flooded with catecholamines, specifically adrenaline and noradrenaline.
It is the ultimate chemical wake-up call. I have noticed that people who do cold plunges always talk about this unparalleled mental clarity afterward. It is as if the cold just strips away all the psychological noise. Is that purely the adrenaline?
It is a combination of adrenaline, noradrenaline, and a significant spike in dopamine that can last for hours after the exposure. When you are submerged in freezing water, your brain does not care about your overflowing email inbox, your financial worries, or your social anxieties. It cares about one thing: immediate survival. It forces you into a state of absolute, undeniable presence. The neurochemical surge clears the mental fog because the brain is intensely focused on adaptation. It is essentially training your nervous system to remain calm and focused while under a massive physiological threat.
That is the magic of it, isn't it? You are practicing how to handle panic. You are rehearsing resilience, which brings up a fascinating newer protocol, thermal oscillation, moving directly from the extreme heat of the sauna into the freezing water of an ice bath.
Yes, creating what we call metabolic friction. By rapidly alternating between vasodilation in the heat and vasoconstriction in the cold, you are demanding an incredible amount of metabolic flexibility. The cardiovascular system is forced to expand and contract rapidly. The nervous system has to swing from parasympathetic relaxation to sympathetic shock and back again. This repeated oscillation trains the body to transition smoothly between different states of arousal and recovery.
It makes me think about the hidden cost of our modern society. We have eradicated environmental friction. We step from a climate-controlled house into a climate-controlled car and then into a climate-controlled office. We never shiver and we rarely sweat unless we choose to. Have we accidentally engineered a state of biological fragility by protecting ourselves from every extreme? Have we forgotten how to adapt?
I believe we have. The human body operates on a use-it-or-lose-it basis. When the environment is perfectly stable, the adaptive mechanisms, the heat shock proteins, the mitophagy, the vascular flexibility, they go dormant. We become metabolically rigid. When a real stressor finally hits us, whether it is a virus, an emotional trauma, or a physical injury, our systems are easily overwhelmed because they have not been trained. Intelligently applied thermal stress is a way to artificially reintroduce the environmental variability our DNA expects.
Intelligently applied being the operative phrase there. Because as much as we love the idea of pushing limits, the modern biohacking culture has a dangerous tendency to assume that if a little bit of stress is good, a massive amount of stress must be better. People are staying in ice water until they are hypothermic or pushing sauna temperatures to unsafe limits.
That is a critical warning. Hormesis is a bell curve. The optimal dose of stress sits right in the middle. If you push past your adaptive capacity, you are no longer triggering repair. You are just causing damage. For someone with underlying cardiovascular issues, severe blood pressure instability, or high allostatic load, meaning they are already overwhelmed by life stress, jumping into an ice bath might trigger an adverse event, not a biological upgrade. The stress is only half of the equation. The adaptation actually happens during the recovery.
That is such a profound biological truth, and it applies to almost everything in life. The growth does not happen during the trauma, it happens in the stillness that follows. If you do not allow the body to rest, to sleep, to rebuild those mitochondrial networks, the stress is just destruction.
Exactly. Thermal stress is a tool, not a religion. It is a way to ask your body a question. but you have to give your body the time and the resources to formulate the answer.
It really shifts the perspective on discomfort. We spend so much of our lives running away from things that are hard, cold, or exhausting. But perhaps we need to start viewing controlled discomfort not as an enemy, but as a biological necessity. It is the friction that sharpens the blade.
That is the ultimate takeaway. Human biology was never meant to stagnate in permanent comfort. We are dynamic, highly adaptable organisms. Every time you step into the heat or submerge yourself in the cold, you are tapping into an ancient evolutionary dialogue. You are reminding your cells of what they are capable of.
You are asking your body, will you weaken or will you evolve? It is a choice we have to make, consciously against the grain of a world that wants to keep us soft. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the science of extreme temperatures. The next time you feel the bite of the cold air or the heavy blanket of summer heat, remember, it is not just weather, it is information. And how you respond to it changes everything.